we spent already an hour together, and Dr. Hora has read our worksheet. We have been talking about existential crisis and the dissolution of that crisis in the existential realization. And so we are ready now for questions. Already there were several that wanted to ask me questions after the lecture, but I said write them down and ask them Dr. Hora when he gets here. Who would like to start?
I would like to.
Okay. So you ask Dr. Hora.
On our way back, Mrs. Hora says, let's go because we'll be late. So yeah, I remember the story about a psychoanalyst who had a patient who would always come way ahead of time, very early to his appointment. And the psychoanalyst said to him, "You're too anxious." Whereupon he started coming late. As he was coming late, the analyst said, "Well, you are resisting." Maybe you know this. After that, he made sure that he arrived on the dot to his appointment. Whereupon the analyst said, "You're compulsive." Can't do that. So God knows nothing about time, and yet he has perfect timing. How is that possible? This is my question to you. Yes?
Is time a human concept?
Certainly it is. God knows nothing about time. And yet God has perfect timing. How is that possible?
If we get rid of that, like, you're gonna be late for work. But if you're not in your container, no one will really know that you're late to work.
Is that so?
Is it? I try it every day.
Are you getting away? God has no knowledge of time, but God, what does God know?
God.
What?
God.
God knows God. God only knows that's true. But you see, God, there's no time in divine reality. Yet God has perfect timing. That's a koan, right?
Yeah. Speak up there.
What's the answer?
That's the going. I don't know.
Forget that.
It's a meta-psychiatric koan, not a Japanese.
In the sense, God is always conscious and always available and responsive. In that sense, God has perfect timing.
Well, you're close, Tim. God knows harmony. God is the harmonizing principle of the universe. And if we walk with God and move in God and have our being consciously in God, we will always arrive just in the right time. Even if we were to come late, it will be the right time. Because God is the harmonizing intelligence governing the entire universe. So that's the answer to the riddle of time. There are neither anxious people, nor resistant people, nor compulsive people in the sight of God. All right, now you can ask some questions. Yes.
Jan had included the word super superconductivity, and he suggested we ask you to expand on that.
I was afraid this will come up.
This is your friend.
This is not an existential crisis, it's an intellectual crisis. But the concept of superconductivity is a late development in our scientific study of behavior of metals in relation to electricity under conditions of cryogenic conditions, which means deep freeze, deep levels of coldness. Now, it has been observed that certain metals develop a fantastic increase in conductivity of electricity to such an extent that absolutely minimal amounts of energy are required for application of this kind of conductive materials. You know, we are always trying to find ways of developing computers which are faster and faster and faster than anything else. Of course, as you know, maybe you know, the physical universe, including scientific materialism, is but a shadow of spiritual evolution. And the greater progress we have in the sphere of spiritual understanding, the greater technological progress there will be in the universe, until these two, when the shadow will completely be absorbed by substance, by reality. And that is called enlightenment. And evolution is moving apparently in that direction. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, what we are aspiring for is attaining such levels of receptivity to ideas coming to us from divine mind, that there will be almost no resistance at all. And thereby we become superconductive, where God and man attain a conscious, practical sense of unity, of oneness. As you know from the dialogues, we made a few remarks about us being emanations of the divine mind. Emanations of the divine mind. If we are emanating from the divine mind, we are like rays of the sun emanating from the sun. How can there be any resistance in a ray to the sun? See, their conductivity of the substance and the qualities of sun are unimpeded in its expression of the rays. And now, when Jesus ascended, he became superconductive to divine spirit. And he has attained that level of realization where he could really demonstrate, I and my Father are one, to such a degree that his material appearance, substance, has vanished. You see, we are just a bunch of resistances here in this The physical, our physical appearance is nothing but just resistance to the substance of God, which we really are. So conductivity is just an idea which has its appeal not only to the physicists, but also those of us who are seeking to realize spiritual truth and spiritual reality and come into perfect harmony with the fundamental order of existence. Is that enough, or shall I ramble on?
No? Any attempts then at personal doing or thinking, any ideas is resistance?
Absolutely. Because there is really no such thing. God is the only mind, and all intelligent ideas, all power or life or love, vigor, vitality, accomplishment, energy, everything flows out of this creative source. But we are not aware of it, and we are misguided. Therefore, we are really continuously resisting God. Even if we're church going, even then we are still resisting God. And when hopefully in our studies, we are becoming less and less resistant and more conductive. You all remember our concept of the funnel consciousness. Those of you who were in Hawaii, we spoke about that. As long as we are a bucket, what is a bucket? A bucket functions by virtue of its design to resist the flow and hold on to it. Now, when the bottom is knocked out, there's less resistance. But still, if you consider a funnel, the sides are still resisting the flow, right? Now, imagine if the funnel is done away with altogether, you have superconductivity. Wouldn't that be nice?
That's Ken.
Yes, Ken.
Dr. Hora, when we are resisting, when we find ourselves in the process, which is the same as wanting, I guess.
Yes, right.
Um, and resisting strongly, that's the existential crisis, I guess.
Well, that usually leads into an existential crisis, which then forces us to reconsider our mode of being in the world, and hopefully let go of some of this resistance and allow God to dominate our lives a little more and more. As our conductive. If we are not even on the spiritual path, imagine how little conductivity there is, right? Yes, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I would, in relationship to the question of existential crisis, that, like Jan and you have just said, that when that time comes, it's an opportunity
Yes,
to learn something and grow.
right.
If a person in an existential crisis does not, even though they appear to be in crisis, they don't seem to really want different answers. Is that just resistance, or is it that they're really not in the crisis that they appear to be in?
Of course, these resistances are unconscious. Nobody can be blamed for it. And then the world has a whole array of pseudo solutions. And the tendency is to reach out for some other solution than becoming more conductive to divine love intelligence. And of course, we can alleviate many of our crises through artificial means or some other temporary relief solutions, like anything, you take anything, just fast relief. There are many ways that we try to cope with life. But only those of us who are on the spiritual path say, is this an existentially valid solution? Am I going to learn something from this problem? Will the understanding of the meaning of this particular problem bring me closer to God? That's the question. And if it doesn't, then we have gone through a crisis without benefiting from it. And then we are ready for the next one. Yes, Bill.
Dr. Hora, if the conductor is used to, it seems like when you say conductor, it seems like it's to channel electricity, like to trap it or to guide it in a direction. And if we are like the conductor, what is the meaning of channeling love intelligence or God's energy? Like where are we channeling? Or what is the purpose?
We are not channeling. God is channeling.
We're not guiding it or we're not putting it to use like...
We ain't doing nothing.
That's bad grammar. Theology.
Good theology.
You see, the more conductive we become, the less sense of autonomy there is. As Jesus put it, of mine own self I can do nothing. I can know nothing. I am nothing. I am just an aspect of infinite love intelligence, glowing here for God. Now, when you glow, are you going to channel your glow or just let it glow? Ask Susan, that's a glower for you. Yeah? And it's very hard for us to sort of contemplate what life would be if we were totally God-governed. It's difficult because we are used to be captains of our boats, and make decisions. Use your head.
Make it happen.
Make it happen, right? Such things. That's the way we are used to live. And the other way is difficult to conceive, even to be interested in it. Who wants to be nothing, right?
Yeah, it's another whole dimension or another whole idea than the idea of the electricity going through the conductor.
The conductor doesn't make choices either. The intelligence, which is applying that material, superconductive, that intelligence determines what use and what direction it will flow. And where does the intelligence come from? From the brain, right? The brain of the scientist. Well, that's how it seems to be, right? Yes. But Einstein knew that the intelligence which he is applying to the physical sciences is not his own. That he too is just a tool of a higher intelligence. I think he made such a statement to that effect. Elizabeth, you have a question?
When you were talking about us being funnels,
Yes.
then the funnel eventually
being done away with.
Mhm.
What would be needed to allow that? Would that just be a constant renewal?
Increasing your conductivity, which what is it in fact? It is responsiveness to inspire wisdom, which governs every step of the way.
Paying constant attention to that?
Constant attention to the flow of inspired ideas from the divine mind. When we say we are here for God, not for what we want or what we don't want, then we make ourselves available. And the divine mind takes over and guides us. And we are sitting in amazement at how these ideas are unfolding, how life becomes increasingly effortless, efficient, and effective. Yes.
In medical psychiatry, the patient will often turn to the teaching in medical psychiatry as a patient to a therapist,
Yes.
and they're in the middle of a crisis or at the end of several.
Yes. Right. Right.
What is the function of the therapist in this process? Because this crisis could be just another problem that is solved in the bucket. The bottom of the bucket is put on in a different way, but it's still there, or it can only be.
You mean how do we handle patients in a crisis?
Well, explain
I
that.
don't really, no, I want to know what the function, in other words, what part in this unfoldment does the therapist in medical psychiatry? How is the function? We don't manage it or tell them this has to be an existential crisis. They can put it together in a world way.
Yes.
Also.
Yes. You really are seeking technical advice.
Resistance.
How's the fourth principle?
God helps those who love him.
Is that the fourth?
No.
Yes,
it's good.
No. Yes. I'm not sure about the number. But firm, if you know what, you know. Right? So, patient comes in a crisis, you sit down and listen and pay attention and glow with love and acceptance, not condemning, not judging, and wait for the meaning of that problem, that crisis, to reveal itself to you. At that moment, you know what. And if you know what, you will know how. God will give you the right idea of how to respond to that individual, which is always different. We have no technique in metapsychiatry, no technique. We cannot teach you how to do it, but we can teach you to understand what you are facing and how to be available to inspired wisdom to respond in a beneficial way.
And that is to seek to be open to the meaning revealing itself. No
Right.
matter what.
Yeah. First, you have to discern the meaning of the problem, and then you wait for an inspired idea to come to you with which you can respond appropriately. Never to judge, right, Beverly? Never to have pre-digested interpretations, right? There is no such thing as interpretation in metapsychiatry. What is that?
Revelation.
What?
Revelation.
Revelation, inspiration, and understanding. What's the difference between clarification and interpretation. Because what reveals itself to us in a session, it needs to be clarified. In all forms of psychotherapy, the procedure is that of providing patients with interpretations. In metapsychiatry, that's a no-no. What's wrong with interpretation?
Opinion.
Right. It is a preconceived idea of what something should mean. Right? And should is also a no-no. We have so many no-nos. But a clarification is what? What is it? Georgiana, what's a clarification?
Well, it would be making clear the meaning of their idea.
Right, exactly. Shedding light on that which has revealed itself to us about the meaning of the individual's problem. To clarify means to make clear. So we are shedding light, but if we give interpretations, we are shedding darkness. In Job, there is a passage where God says, "Who is this that consoleth darkness with words without knowledge?" And that's what an interpretation is counseling darkness, because it has no direct meaning to the patient. If you interpret something, it has meaning to Freud or to Adler or to Jung, but not to the patient. Yes.
Dr. What is psychotherapy? Is psychotherapy the word has a connotation of doing something to somebody or manipulating in some way?
Psychotherapy is simply therapy of the psyche. But we are not dealing with the psyche. What are we dealing with?
Spiritual reality.
We are dealing with modes of being in the world. We are not treating people. We're not treating patients, Linda. We are not treating sicknesses, right? We are not treating emergency. We are not treating organs. We are not treating functions. We are treating modes of being in the world. In that respect, this is an entirely whole nother smoke, as they say. That's a different ballgame. What do we mean? Yes, Bill, did you? What do we mean by modes of being in the world? What determines our mode of being in the world?
Preconceived thoughts.
Preconceived thoughts? Yes. What else?
Later.
Right, but the values we cherish or hate or fear, the belief systems which we have espoused, these determine our mode of being in the world. And usually they are out of sync with reality. And that's where our troubles come from.
I have a question about that.
Yes, Georgia.
When our modes of being, John was talking about our thinking is really a system organized way, and that really is what we are. So then what we're trying to determine is our pattern of thinking or approaching the world.
Well, if we say pattern of thinking, that's a psychological formulation, and it's not adequate to our objective, because mode of being in the world is much more than just a pattern of thinking. It encompasses everything else, and particularly our unconscious concept of God. One of the most important things, whether we are atheistic, communistic, or agnostic, right? Thank you. We all have a secret notion about God. And that has a very big influence on our mode of being in the world. And it has to reveal itself in the course of working, and that has to be clarified. And to the extent that the metapsychiatric worker is able to convey an existentially valid idea of God, that is of tremendous healing value. But the whole world suffers. He's a God-fearing man, but he has a certain theology, which then bears such bloody fruits.
I may ask, in the crisis, there is this moment, I looked on your definitions of agony and theogony.
Yeah.
There is a point that we are agonizing, and in a crisis that is heightened.
Yes.
And then we may move on to theogony.
Yes.
But quite often in a crisis, the receptivity is less, and we are more frantically looking for wrong solutions.
Yes, right.
What is the meaning that the receptivity is less, and then what can help us to break through or move? How can we unhook ourselves from that self-imposed, self-imposed imprisonment that we feel ourselves in?
Yes.
Something more. Maybe.
But it is true that in a crisis we say, don't talk to me about God.
Yes.
I'm not interested in religion. I want to feel good. That's, well, here the tactfulness and the wisdom of the therapist and the inspiration coming from God is needed to guide the patient towards seeing. And very often the mistake is made that instead of helping such a patient, we give them a lecture about metapsychiatry. And that, of course, doesn't help at all. And he gets turned off not only from God, but also from metapsychiatry. So you have to be very tactful and compassionate with such a patient, and don't rush in with explanations. And even if you cannot do anything, just spend a half an hour quietly and in silence, and let that patient cry or scream or curse or whatever, but patiently. Let him kick the desk with his foot if he wants to, if it's not a very expensive. Of great importance is, of course, for all of us to learn compassion. Compassion has great calming and healing value for people, especially for people who are agitated and in a crisis. Now, what is compassion, and what way it must be separated from sympathy empathy, antipathy, and schmaltz. Do we all understand compassion? We must never feel sorry for anybody. We must never sympathize with problems. We must not empathize. For instance, traditional psychotherapy says, I know just how you feel. It's a big deal. So what?
You take care of it
Now, what is genuine compassion?
Have compassion with the other person's low understanding.
Right. It is understanding the lack of understanding without judging, condemning, or being impatient or thinking, oh, you stupid guy, if you would only know what I know, then you wouldn't have to suffer. No, we have to have true compassion. And if we can spend some time with a patient who doesn't know anything yet, just having compassion, that in itself has great therapeutic value. It is very difficult to find someone in this world who wouldn't judge us. And to meet such an individual in a quiet moment has a tremendous impact, a healing impact. Because wherever we turn, people are in the habit of judging, criticizing, evaluating us, and bombarding us with personal questions and assuming that we are guilty until proven innocent. This is the way of the world. And therefore, if any one of you meets someone in a spirit of true compassion, that will be a tremendously healing experience to that individual. And nothing needs to be said, but the compassion has to work its own magic. Yes?
Expanding a little on your question, what is the meaning in our own life? We're aware of spiritual, I've been a psychiatrist. What does it mean to our own lack of receptivity in a crisis? I find that, until you get into a medication when I do a trial in a crisis, it's much more difficult.
Yes. Well, you have not yet reached a full understanding that there is no other solution but God. Once we understand that, and no matter what crisis we run into, we know that that's where we have to turn. And we turn to God in meditation. In meditation, we get close to God in consciousness, and we become still, and pretty soon we can hear a silent voice speaking to us and providing us with the idea which will solve the problem. Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Yes?
So in other words, when we have the crisis and we have not a therapist or individual, then actually God is the compassionate one,
Right.
who is not saying anything,
Right.
but present. And actually what is required of us is in that moment of agitation, I'm not sure what is required of us.
You sit down, close your eyes, and let an idea come to you. You're turning to God for the solution of your problem.
You would wait for understanding,
Yes.
for something to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
First, you have to understand that there is no other solution.
Yes, right. And you have to have grown sufficiently to appreciate the right solutions to all problems.
How is the knowing that the solution comes from God and not from our own motivation?
Yes,
Certainly, a lot of factors talking to the
yes,
awareness.
right,
How
right.
do we trust that this is coming from God?
Well, of course, you have to learn, and we had a semester, a course called Spiritual Discernment. Were you attending that? No. In this course, we tried to come to see the difference between thoughts which come from the sea of mental garbage and thoughts which come to us from the ocean of love intelligence. We can learn to distinguish between these thoughts. And you also have to understand that nobody has his own thoughts. We are not thinkers. We are just aware of thoughts. If we are not spiritually sophisticated due to studying with Jan this course, then you're just a victim of thoughts all the time. They come to you from the radio, from the television, from the newspaper, from the neighbors, from everywhere in the world thoughts come and victimize us. We are constantly being victimized by invalid thoughts. The world is in a bad shape because of everyone. You see, everyone is really innocent because in our ignorance, we are constantly being victimized by invalid thoughts, and we cannot tell the difference between valid thoughts and invalid thoughts unless we have learned and developed the faculty of spiritual discernment. So that is very important too.
Could I ask one question on this subject? Yeah. Could I ask you to say a couple more things about you? I said you have to come to understand that God is the only solution, and you said you have to know sufficiently. Also, you have to know sufficiently to recognize it.
To recognize and to appreciate and to love God's solution rather than a human solution. There are many human solutions, you know. The vast majority of people live that way in this world. They just keep muddling through, as the saying goes, with various half-baked solutions.
So you have to go second on my one.
Yes, well, but that in itself is not enough. You know, we can get sick and give up. Right. Because we have no solution. The solutions of the world are temporary and no real solution. But if you are studying metapsychiatry, you can reach a point where you know what the solution is, and it is the real solution, and you love it, and you're grateful for it, and you turn to it every day, all the time. You're living with it. Your mode of being in the world becomes that of spiritual existence. You move from sense existence to soul existence. You see yourself as an individual soul, a spiritual emanation of the divine mind. And therein lies your solution. So we both have to understand there is this, and we have to appreciate it, be grateful for it, and live in that dimension of consciousness. Yeah? From sense existence to soul existence. Did you want to ask something?
You used the term innocence twice.
Yes.
Could you define innocence? And I'm wondering what, if I'm not innocent, what other things I might be.
Guilty. What's the opposite of innocence?
The alternative to innocent is no scent. What is no scent?
You know?
No. It's from the Latin nocere, means to hurt. If you're innocent, you are not hurting anybody. Therefore, you're not a hurtful individual. You don't hurt people. If you are hurtful, even then, really, you are innocent because you're hurting people ignorantly. But if we understand that the problem is always ignorance, whether we are alloplastic or autoplastic, what's that? Claudette?
Well, one is self and the other is for another.
Yes. Autoplastic people hurt themselves and alloplastic people hurt others. But we are always innocent because the culprit is always ignorance. We suffer from ignorance, and we are sitting ducks in the devil's shooting gallery. And devil is shooting invalid thoughts into our consciousness. And that's how we are getting hurt all the time.
Briefly? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm wondering if ignorance is the culprit, that kind of implies that I'm naive about things. I don't know much. Does innocence there imply that I know that I am not attached, or I can see, but I am not interested in ignorance? Is that the quality of innocence?
Well, that's a very fine distinction between naivete and innocence. What's the difference?
The naive person is unaware. And it's not spiritual development. It's a susceptible state to be in.
Yes.
Unaware of the ways of the world.
Right. The naive individual is mostly autoplastic, mostly getting hurt himself. And the innocent is not naive, but he cannot be blamed for hurting others.
Guileless.
Yes. Yes.
You talked
Yeah.
in one of our last lessons, the book about the innocent eye.
Yes.
So that would be seeing through what is and more attached. Right?
Well, the innocent eye is the eye of an honest artist who may not be enlightened, but he has a sense of appreciation of aesthetic appreciation. And he is very honest about it. You know, there's a great appreciation of primitive art when you see Grandma Moses, for instance, or some of the folk artists whose work have a certain appeal. What is so appealing about the primitive artist? Not his technique, but his radical and honesty. He has not been spoiled through education.
My children are.
Right. So he looks at the world with an innocent eye. And there is a certain appeal to it. What is objectionable to us often is falsehood, so false sophistication, pretension, and claiming to be something what we are not, putting on the dog, or all sorts of complications. An individual can be screwed up in an infinite number of ways.
Right.
Glad you agree.
Alona.
Changing it a little bit, but I was really glad when we were going to talk about existential crisis, because one of my questions before coming was what was existential anxiety in the kind of addiction or distinction or whatever the two is. Trying to bring through the two of the. Can you verify that?
Yeah. Can anybody speak about this subject?
Existential anxiety distinguished from what?
From what?
Existential crisis.
No, every existential crisis has the experience of existential anxiety. But what we have to distinguish is between social anxiety and existential anxiety. What is the difference?
Social anxiety, there is an anxiety about an interpersonal situation. And in an existential anxiety, there is anxiety about our overall life, survival.
Right.
We begin to fear that our survival is at stake.
So if a client comes to you and it's apparent that their anxiety is a social anxiety, then what is needed for the therapist to know to be helpful if that client is not asking
The right question.
sincere questions?
In other words, how do you handle social anxiety?
And the bird. Yeah.
I saw a book recently and under the title was "You Think of Me is None of My
Right.
Business." Now, this is, of course, a futile attempt at coping with social anxiety.
How's the people?
It is futile because it will result in callousness. If you harden yourself against what people think, well, you can become rude and callous, and I don't give a damn. And you cope with your anxiety in this negative attitude. That certainly is not the right solution. Because if you harden yourself, you become hard. How will you be a beneficial presence in the world if you close yourself up and say, I don't give a damn what you think? Right?
That's a tremendous point.
Yeah? So what do we have to offer
Yeah.
as a remedy to social anxiety? Yeah? Can't hear.
Like
Instead of being interested in what the other person thinks, be interested in what God thinks.
Yes.
No, what people are thinking something about us. We cannot deny, we cannot just pass that off.
Yes, Fern?
I think if a patient is seeking a solution to social anxiety, they are saying, how could I be, what should I do to conform again and be okay as a social person?
Right.
But
Very
if you
good.
offer the individual and it's attractive, appeal to them the solution of increasing the quality of their love,
Yes.
then that would be an invitation
Yes.
to see things in the perspective of love, rather than putting together a new person that fits in the
Yes. Now we would like you to tell us how to increase the quality of your love.
I know the answer.
Come on, let's.
If you know what.
You see, there is only one remedy to social anxiety, namely learning that we are not here for ourselves, we are not here for others, we are here for God. How will that relieve our social anxiety?
But we are neither callous nor sensitive.
Right,
We focus ourselves not on the other or on ourselves,
right.
but on God, on something valid.
What does it mean to focus ourselves on God?
We'll ask the class.
Okay. It's a cough out. We shift our attention. It never occurs to us to think about what people think about us. And we only think about people the same as we think about ourselves. That everything and everyone is here for God. And God is all there is. And God is love, intelligence. And we are here to glow. And if that is our focus, there is no anxiety. There is just harmony and wisdom. And you may not have heard this word before, peggle.